Hi Anshul. Welcome to the Creative Operations podcast by Artwork Flow. So Anshul, feel free to introduce yourself as well to our audience here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me over. It has been about 12 years now that I've been working in design.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, I've worked at, so my journey started at a very small scale startup, which I'll tell you later about. But then, yeah, I've gone through a lot of startups. I've worked on multiple big companies, MNCs sort of, and IT services as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that journey has also molded me. I've molded a few things along my way, as well as that has also changed me in a lot of ways how I approach things. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that has been pretty good so far.
Interesting. So, one thing I was really interested to know, how did you transition from studying aerospace to transitioning to this entire field of design and brand? Like, how did you skill yourself? How did you go about that whole experience?
So this imagine it like so I was in second year college aerospace engineering. This is 2010. I'm going back to Jaipur from Dehradun. So the bus is passing through Delhi during daytime,
Mm-hmm.
and Commonwealth Games prep is in like full form, right? So everything is branded, all the tracks are being built, and all of that. So this is like a precursor to the story that I'm going to give it to you. So it's like basically you start a journey and you never know that your mind has registered that this is what is something that you would want to do. So that day is gone. Cut to in like placement year, I get placed in Infosys. Cut to 2 years later, where I realize I don't want to pursue this. And then what do I want to do? So I kind of started picking up on tools. What are the tools that designers are using and how to use them? Getting into technicalities of softwares and stuff like that. But what I was missing was a bigger picture. And I started applying to a variety of firms. Of the firms, one of the firms that I had applied on, the person kind of called me up and said, "Will you be okay or open to having a Zoom call interview?" This is like 2015. So I kind of preferred going in person. So I suggested, "How about I come to Bangalore, we interview, and then we decide upon the entire process and how it goes about." So I landed in Bangalore 26th January. That's a long weekend. I took an off from office and I kind of made it a long weekend because it was somewhere in between like Thursday and Friday was not off. So I did that. We interviewed, and then after the interview, they said we'll let you know in a few hours because it was a relatively small firm, about 20 people, I guess. It was all like design consulting firm. And so while I was going back, so I went to a bus stop in Bangalore, and then so the buses were going from in both directions.
Hmm.
So before I was getting onto the bus to airport, I kind of called them once again and said, like, this is in a span of 1 hour. That if you want me, let me know. I'll probably go to BTM. Otherwise, I would probably take the bus to the airport because coming from BTM all the way to the airport would be a lot difficult. And the firm is like in the outskirts. It's near Yelahanka somewhere. It's like
Hmm.
bang on middle of the two spaces. So when I said that, they said, "Can you wait for 10 minutes?" And after 10 minutes, they called back and said, "When can you start?" So I said, "Next Monday." And they were like, "Cool, I'll see you. We'll see you next Monday." So that is how my design journey began. It was a very small firm called Spread Design,
Hmm.
and I knew this while applying to that place that the person who was the creative director and co-founder of that firm was the person who did the branding for Commonwealth Games in 2010.
Okay.
So that was the inspiration for me, and like we kind of developed this. I want to work with this person and see how and what is the scale of things that they influence when it comes to branding and through design. So kind of started over there. That is where I got the big picture sort of a thing. Before that, it was mostly me trying to match up things and trying to figure out what kind of people that I would be working with, the clients. So the output was always lacking in terms of having a overarching thought or a, like what is a brand, like that kind of a thought was missing. What does the brand represent? What are the values that it comes with? Those things happened to me at Spread, where I saw and worked on a lot of variety of political campaigns. I worked on a lot of rebranding work. Worked on creating pitches for future tech, which was like around leap motion. It was around augmented reality and that kind of stuff. Also, like you generating 3D dome experiences. So that was the kind of work being done there along with the branding. So
Hmm.
that gave me a very wide perspective on how the branding is not limited to just your color choices, type, or all those things. It needs to expand and flow into n number of mediums, and it has to be cohesive while doing that.
Hmm.
So that is what I kind of picked up at Spread. Yeah, that was my journey. Like that was a transition, I would say, that I took from aerospace to design.
That's really interesting, and I must say that you're a very good storyteller because I could actually imagine, like, I mean, living in Bangalore, it's always difficult to make choices and optimizing time and which direction to go, right? And like having that journey from landing after working for a few years, landing a stint at a design firm, and then really starting at the bottom and making your way up. That's incredible. Now would love to know more about I would love to know more about your understanding of how you said, right, the brand needs to go into different mediums, right? What was that building that for, say, a company like a Swiggy or a Razorpay, for example, right? These are all digital platforms and extremely widely used, right? And the impact that they've had on Indian consumer and Indian ecosystem is huge. Like, I use Swiggy every day to order groceries. So for a company like a Swiggy and for a company, say, like a Razorpay, what does brand really mean? And as designers, how did you transition their like positioning and customer understanding into day to day creative assets or creative projects, or and how did that flow into business metrics?
So here I would say that is also a tie-up question to one of the things that we were looking at. So while working at Swiggy and Razorpay, the end goal is to get impressions,
Hmm.
right? What you're doing and the creatives that you're building
Hmm.
needs to churn that number, and then you kind of experiment, tweak, and create better creators out of the previous ones.
Hmm.
That is the flow of learning that happens at at Swiggy or like Razorpay. While like at the same time, the brand building bit needs to happen in the initial few days of the brand itself. So while at Swiggy, I think there was only 350 people when I had joined Swiggy. This is back in 2017. 350 to 500 people company. The decision making was generally was quick, and the pace was really fast. We used to create like full blown out of office coding
Hmm.
campaigns in like probably a week. That's all. Like with the whole full proof print proofing, getting
Hmm.
things ready, copy and like campaign and like other assets. So there it kind of like Swiggy kind of taught me how to build a 360 campaign design, creating
Hmm.
and generating awareness around a singular brand. So while at Swiggy, I was kind of working on one of the food fest or something like that for a out of office campaign design. It was all supposed to be print, but then the creative director there
Hmm.
said that we should also look for inbound as well as outbound marketing.
Hmm.
So for inbound, we started creating similar looking Google ads, and then we also started adapting those ads and other creatives into Facebook, Twitter, and number of social media platforms as well.
Hmm.
So and then the digital product design came in. They
Hmm.
kind of saw the campaign being built around this sort of like a message. They offered us that we would also integrate that message or like any creative that we would want as marketing team into the app. So for the duration of the campaign being run, that app will also have a ticker going, which would also, so that way it was like, it's on your mobile app, it's on the outdoor hoarding, it's on your social media. We had a radio spot, so radio as well as, so it was like a full 360 campaign that we kind of worked on, and
Hmm.
that whole thing came together in about 1.5 weeks. It was a lot of hassle, but it was amazing. Like it came out really well. We got like good impressions, about 1 million plus impressions for the entire campaign, which was great. At like given the time that we are like a company of 500 folks and everyone is talking about Swiggy and the campaign that goes out and those kind of things. So it was a great learning experience. Similarly for Razorpay, I would say it's a very different and it's a very niche sort of a environment, or the audience is very niche. You're working for businesses or small to medium business owners. Those are
Hmm.
your primary folks. Larger organizations will get you because they already know, and they rely on the security or the, what do you say, back end services of Razorpay. And these medium and small business owners rely on Razorpay's ability to generate new features to cater their
Hmm.
specific customized, issues that they might face, like a, let's say, a farmer, or let's say a clay pot salesman, or as well as a paint seller, like, those kind of things. So
Hmm.
those folks would want Razorpay to come up with a very specific sort of, solutions, design solutions. So the product team will work on that. The project managers and the product marketing managers would work together on generating or creating a content strategy, and the idea itself, like why do we need this feature. There's a
Hmm.
lot of research that goes into creating or prioritizing the actual feature that they want to launch. So once that is prioritized and they decide that this is a feature that we're going to launch, while that is being designed and developed, there's a parallel marketing strategy which is going on, which is around content strategy, and then visualizing that content strategy into a proper marketing campaign. So as soon as the feature is ready, we
Hmm.
have the creatives in place. We take, so Razorpay functions on showcasing their product as the in the forefront, while as Swiggy and other, user, sorry, what do you say?
Places?
Yeah, user facing versus business facing, like,
Right. B2C and
yeah,
B2B.
B2C and B2B, exactly. So
Yeah.
B2C companies focus on the messaging. The B2B company focuses on content, like the product showcase. That is how like different the two things are. So in
Hmm.
fintech, it took me a while to actually wrap my head around that what is it that we are selling. So
Hmm.
Razorpay, while when I had joined, I knew only for, what do you say, that UPI transaction backend service provider. But then I
Hmm.
went into the system and then I kind of saw they're doing a lot of very niche kind of products and features that they're building. So when I was gathering those informations from the information for the, let's say, marketing or campaign design,
Hmm.
or like brand building itself in the entirety of the whole thing, it needs to be aligned with the campaigns are just an extension of the brand. It's basically
Hmm.
like your limbs that are you're like reaching out to your customers, while like it's like sort of like you reach out to your customers through a brand campaign. The personality remains the same. It needs to extend and kind of become that kind of
Right.
where the consumer or the customer that you're touching with the campaign needs to know that this is the brand that I'm interacting with. So
Right.
that kind of builds through, I would say, experience and uh, iterating and a lot of, rejections when it comes to like creatives that you're doing. About, I would say, 90% of the work that I've done has been is lying on my hard drive. Only 10% of the work is actually out there, which is, working. It's like 90% of your work would probably be not, aligned to one thing or the other, but the 10% makes it all worthwhile. So
Yeah.
that's the idea.
That's interesting. Yeah. When we do, client pitches at Desworks, it's the same. You pitch five concepts and one gets selected, and other four go into a drive that never gets used. So I'm interested in the brand personality thing that you mentioned, right? And especially for, say, companies like Swiggy and Razorpay. So what do you think the personality of the brand is? I mean, I'm sure they have a brand book, so they would have defined, but I'm just curious to know, like, where is, and it's very interesting because these are new age companies building for Indian businesses and Indian consumers. So, any insights into how the brand is thought about from a personality perspective at either of these companies?
So at Swiggy, we did this activity where we kind of asked the leadership team about what would Swiggy wear to a bar, and what would it drink and who would it interact with, right? So that is how we came up with quick solution to how what is Swiggy like as a person. Uh, that was like a quick hack to understand what do they think about Swiggy and where would they want to position themselves in the market that is like getting saturated. Like this is the time when Food Panda, Uber Eats, Zomato, Swiggy, everyone was competing. Now we have like two clear winners, but yeah, like that is the era, and everyone was trying to copy each other. But the creative director at Swiggy wanted to have it a distinct identity. Like
Hmm.
this is different from your regular Uber Eats, different from Food Panda, it's different from this. So that kind of gave us insights into what do they think about Swiggy as the leadership team and what are the values that they want to uphold when it comes to the company, like culture building or the kind of people
Hmm.
that we are. So what came out was basically like a quirky, funny man or a woman. It was not that important back then, but it was just I'm just kind of trying to keep it gender neutral. So like a fun, quirky human being who would probably have like gin and tonic at a bar and probably interact with folks and kind
Hmm.
of win them over with wits. That was the idea that we wanted to build. So the campaign designs, the copywriting, everything became around that central idea, and that is how we grew into. So like you would see a lot of ads
Hmm.
that we put out were mostly like fun.
Hmm.
There would be like
Yeah.
a small amount of serious element to it, but there would be like rarities and anomalies.
Yeah,
Rest
when you say that, I get reminded of like a lot of Twitter stuff and like a lot of memes that have gone around with Swiggy and some of their like cute little features like changing the icon of the rider. So I get the
yeah.
how those dots connect.
Exactly. So, like, once you have that brand personality in place, but it
Hmm.
needs to come from the correct owners. Like, the right participants need to be a part of that particular exercise when you're doing it. Uh,
Hmm.
so, we were lucky that way at Swiggy. We were like the access to the founders and like CMOs and CPOs was really easy,
Hmm.
and you just walk up to them and speak to them. So, it was a really flat culture, I would say there.
Hmm.
That is how I kind of understood what is a brand persona.
Interesting, very interesting. So, now like working at very high growth startups to transitioning to an MNC, like how has that transition been like? And I also read that you also have experience in Web3 creating XR stuff. So tell us more about your journey after that. Like, how has that been like? One of the intent of this podcast is also to educate our readers in terms of, what are different career options, how to upscale into different roles. So I would love to know more about that.
So what do you want me to speak first, Web3 or the MNC bit?
Maybe MNC bit, and then we can do like a deep dive on technology.
Sure. So this is not my like first MNC thing. I had worked at one of the MNCs before my career started there, Infosys, and then I kind of moved away from the whole thing because I felt there's too many processes in place and like the work is not happening. Impact I can't see. All of that was there. So I moved away and kind of started working on like the smaller companies. That way you could actually see the numbers. You can go up to people and ask them like, what is the number of impressions that you see on these particular set of ads or the creatives that I had done for this brand. They
Hmm.
would tell you, and then you can improve, right? This
Hmm.
that did not exist at Infosys. Like you would by the time the numbers come in, the campaign has stopped running. So there is no point and there's no room for improvement or tweaking. And then you just take your learnings and apply it in the next project, which might
Hmm.
happen after 6 months. I don't, you never know. But let's say right now where I'm at, this place has a very quick turnaround time. Like you need to grasp what the client wants and what are the requirements. So if you
Hmm.
get the requirements on point, your delivery times would shrink down to probably 4 hours. So there are times when we have to work and deliver things on a 8 hour 6 hour notice,
Hmm.
and those are like it's not even their fault. Like the design was never considered as like a forethought, it was like a afterthought. And then they actually want the presentation or the pitch or let's say the product that they are working on needs to look better in terms of,
Hmm.
visually. So for those clients, it's just up like facelifting design. There are
Hmm.
other clients who you would work with, where it is more like they want to know what is the potential of this entire thing. Can
Hmm.
we or us as designers push that envelope further? So those kind of projects and clients run are like a long-term relationship.
Hmm.
You kind of build it up and then kind of try to work your way around how can you give them quality of life improvements as well as, so those kind of work is where you have the scope to explore how can you spill the brand bit into different mediums. So by
Hmm.
mediums I mean augmented reality experiences, virtual showrooms, or let's say you're like having virtual concerts, entire metaverses, those kind of things. So
Hmm.
if you have like that kind of relationship with the person that you're working with, uh, they would want you to explore those things. So
Interesting.
yeah, so like coming from like the previous organization where I worked at, it was a very short stint, but we kind of built the entire thing from ground up, and it was just a metaverse advisory. So
Hmm.
all the projects that came to them were around AR and VR and metaverse. So we worked with VH1, we worked with Titan, and these kind of brands to product showcase. Let's say with Titan, you're showcasing a watch in a AR space or like a VR space, a new watch launch that is happening. Similarly, for let's say VH1, we were working on animating an entire logo in AR when you scan the QR
Hmm.
code or like the festival. There is a festival called Supersonic by
Hmm.
VH1. So we worked on that. So like the brand was in place, but we had to
Hmm.
convert and understand how that brand can flow into AR experiences. So we
Wow.
created like full augmented reality experiences for them. So now I'm taking those learnings from the previous organization and applying it here. Once the brand is built, I kind of push the envelope by saying, can you also, do you want to see this in like your brand in motion, but in like AR and VR space? And generally the answer is yes, of course. So we
Hmm.
kind of provide that as well. So that is how we work with, internally.
Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, in fact, yeah, I see that. I mean, how consulting and then, working with different clients would give one exposure into how different technologies can be applied into retail. Just out of curiosity, any like particularly successful use cases that you've seen for these kind of like Web3 technologies where a business has, you don't have to obviously name them, but any kind of use case where there has been success in implementing such kind of an experience in a retail store or a launch or a festival
I think
of
a
such.
lot of brands are now shifting towards augmented or virtual reality product launches. Like Nike did one of these campaigns recently where they kind of showcased the entire shoe in a glass box at a store. If you would walk into the Nike store, scan the QR, there would
Hmm.
appear a box like a hologram sort of, and with the proper shoe in place, and then you can interact with the whole thing. That was a product showcasing that they did for a new shoe launch that was about to happen. That I felt was a very moving thing to do because a lot of people interacted with that. Similarly, there is like a lot of people now moving towards leap motion and those kind of tech where
Hmm.
you can interact with the AR experience with your bare hands. You don't need
Hmm.
a or that kind of experiences that they're trying to. It's just a device. You put it on a table. Ask the person to interact with it. It'll create a holographic image or like a projection image for you. You can interact with that. So those I feel are like really successful use cases because it's like immersive enough for the person to have that intrigue to interact with the product.
Hmm.
If you're creating an AR experience or let's
Hmm.
say any XR experience for that matter, and the
Hmm.
person feels like they feel compelled or pushed into experiencing it, then it's not a successful like experience that you've created. The person also needs to have that like
Hmm.
self motivation to kind of interact with it, or like you need to have enough uh, quality of experience should be high enough for the person to experience it and then want more out of it. So that is what I would say. Like those are like my 2 cents to this whole Web3 thing that's going on.
Interesting. I haven't explored a lot, but I think it sounds. I mean, I am aware of the news and the different experiences, experiments that people are doing. But I was just curious in terms of like business, how is the, industry evolving as such? So Anshul, Gen AI is the thing that everyone is talking about. So as a designer, brand design, or even in terms of doing VR and AR and building some of these 3D experiences. Have you personally explored it, and what is your, thought process on where, it can actually grow and show impact in actual business sense over the next few years?
So I feel like what I feel is like right now there's a transition that is happening with a lot of companies, and a lot of folks are experimenting in that space. What is missing is people being open to taking like a big step with the AI thing, right?
Hmm.
I've not seen a single brand campaign which was
Hmm.
done using Gen AI. Like probably one or two, but at max, that is a very less number with the for the amount of buzz that Gen AI has right now. So
Yeah.
for me, the implementation or utilization of that lies with the fact that oh, like in packaging design, you need a hero image for something. You kind of generate
Yeah.
that quickly using your any of the n number of tools available out there right now. Take that imagery, put it in, and then you are done with the packaging design for
Yeah.
the product. Similarly, let's say if you're generating imagery for a brand design, you want a very specific sort of a look and feel to the photo. But rather than
Yeah.
you going out to a photo studio, asking them to take a picture and then post process, and then give it to you, that's a full 1.5 week long process that could be cut down to probably 4 hours if you're good with your words and the space of, let's say, the AI image generators that are out
Hmm.
there, and you're good with your wording, you can generate the similar looking. It won't be real, of course,
Yeah.
but it would be as close to as possible. And then you're cutting down a lot of costs when it comes to hiring a photographer or a studio, and then going out for it's not a real it's not I would still go for that, but like sometimes the budget doesn't allow for it for
Yeah.
the campaign or the brand that you're building. So
Hmm.
in those spaces, these kind of tools come in really handy. These are like very quick life hacks that have made my life so easy as a freelance designer, that I don't have to go outsourcing for different people. So similarly, if I'm writing a copy, if I have
Hmm.
the brand persona in place, and then I want to write copy for a creative that
Hmm.
they might need, they would ask me for like, hey, we are saying we want to this is the campaign, or this is the message that we want to put out on LinkedIn, can you come up with a creative? So you use chat dot openai for copy, you use Midjourney for the imagery, and then you have your design skills in place to combine all of that into a creative,
Yeah.
and you give it to them in like probably 4 hours. I think 4 to 6 hours is what I would say.
Yeah. And it also really helps to just do ideation and like have like a visual representation before you go into an actual execution. So it saves time for everyone.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, interesting thoughts. I think we've come, it's been a really interesting conversation. We aimed for 20 minutes. We're already at 30. So very interesting stories. We just have this last, short rapid fire round for you, Anshul, like a fun thing. So we'll get into that. So, what's your favorite constellation?
um I would say Cassiopeia.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite band?
Oof, that's a tough one. I would say Led Zepp, or like it's a very close competition between a few of them, like Rolling Stones, Led Zepp, and this other one, Pink Floyd.
All of them very good, very
Yeah,
difficult to
these are
pick.
like really tough people to choose between. Like, who would you go for? Yeah,
Yeah, I would go for Pink Floyd, but I
yeah.
mean,
I
you've
mean,
got your favorites. If you could go back in time, where would you want to be?
go back in time, I think after college, before joining that first job, those 7 months was a really good self-reflecting period for me, where I kind of explored a lot of things that I wanted to do. Yeah, so
Mm,
that was pretty
great.
fun.
So here's the last one, Anshul. So, you've had an interesting journey so far. What's like so if you had to define or, tell us your dream job, what would that be?
Probably working at Google Creative Labs. That
Hmm.
is the like a
That's a good one.
pipeline dream. Yeah. So like if I could ever get into that and probably work on researching design
Hmm.
solutions rather than providing design solutions. Like I want to get into research and that kind of like, prototyping design that you've not seen or heard of. Like I've seen a lot of these kind of work where they would have like an interactive wall which
Hmm.
works on infrared light. So you move your hand through something,
Hmm.
things will move, or you would get a different kind of sound. Or let's say if you switch off your light and just have your mobile phone flash on, there are
Hmm.
walls and there are museums where you have a full story going, but if the lights are on, you can't see any of that. You have to switch
Hmm.
off your light and you see the story in shadows through your flashlight. So those kind of things, that is something that I would want to do in life.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Great. So that was a really interesting conversation, Anshul. And thank you for taking out the time. And it's really late. But still, I mean, I do this with people in East Coast, West Coast as well. So I'm used to this timing. But thank you for staying up
No
late
worries.
and
I
this and that.
understand.
So, yeah.
Thanks for having me, though.